Welcome to A Woman's Brew, where women talk about beer. Hops come in all shapes and sizes, and in today's episode, we explore a variety of different hop products currently being used. I'm Joanne, and this is Tori.
Hello, hello.
And we're two beer-loving women on a mission to get more people drinking and talking about great beer. Come join us.
Category is hops.
Category is hops. Hop eleganza.
Hop eleganza. So I'm wearing my BarthHaas top today because it is literally my only hop-based shirt.
I didn't think that far in advance. I've just got my Coven shirt on.
I was like,
could have the hop earrings in.
Happy days. I can't wear normal earrings, or else I would have worn them. Yeah. I would have got myself some hop earrings and worn them.
Hop earrings are really difficult to get hold of, by the way. Like,
are they?
Yeah. Mine are little wooden hop shapes, and they came from a company called the Working Clasp.
Oh, I like
Birmingham.
That.
Yeah, they make really lovely jewellery, and I have like a statement hop bind necklace as well that goes with them.
Ooh.
But I found when I've been looking for hop earrings, for those listeners who might be interested in finding some hoppy earrings, it's quite difficult here in the UK. Like, you have to kind of get them shipped over from different places.
So I'm just doing a quick search on Etsy because I was like, I wonder if like a Etsy.
That's where I got mine from.
So there are, there's a few things.
Have you filtered it? Have you filtered it to shop in the to a shop that's based in the UK, so you haven't got to pay like stupid?
So there's not a lot of them. That being said, I found Feral Strumpet. That is the name.
That sounds great.
Genuinely, I'm in. I'm all in on this. I'm looking at where they are in the US. So they do ship to the UK,
see?
But I think that I want to say that there is somebody that makes jewellery around Reading.
Oh yeah.
That has made beer and like hop jewellery. I'll have to try to find that. If I can find it, I'll send the link.
I'm up for some new hop jewellery, but I find it difficult to find it because you can get some in the US, but like it has to be shipped over here, and then you have to pay like stupid amounts of customs, which I'm not down for.
I'll try to find the one that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But it's all like made out of what looks like quite thick like plastic, and it's quite cool. They look really, really cool. If I can find them, I will definitely. I mean, obviously I could probably put earrings in. It wouldn't be that efficient. I'd have to put it under my tunnel, and then it would just be sad because it would just be like lack of decoration. Yeah. That's what someone needs to make, like plugs and like tunnels for.
I bet it's not right.
Like with the
hop jewellery, Rex.
Hop jewellery.
Let
you need
us
to get.
Know,
you need to get hop jewellery for someone with stretched ears. If you know someone that makes like earrings for people with stretched ears that have hop based things on it, let me know, because I'd definitely buy them. But until then, gonna just have to wear necklaces. Yeah. Which I don't have at the moment, or else I would have had them on.
Anyway, so we are actually talking about hops. We're talking about different hop products today, inspired by this beer from Phantom called VIP Person.
I will say, actually, so it wasn't even this bit. I don't even think it was this bit that set me down the path. So it was, it's Phantasm, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Phantasm's what's used in this. And I think that I saw, and it might have been a different Phantom beer. I could have sworn it was not VIP Person. It was something else that was being made. And I want to say it probably still was Phantom, because I was like, oh, haha, they're using it because of the name. And I went searching for it. I couldn't find it. And I couldn't find anything else that was being made with it at the time when I saw this one and got it. Not any that were like easily accessible. Yeah. And I was like just racking my brain, like I know I've seen it. And then I happened to see that in the shop at the Hive, and I was like, okay, maybe this is just the one, but I'm fairly confident it wasn't. But this is the one that I was like, it would be quite interesting to talk about hop products, because this is quite a new thing, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're going to get into it in a minute, but Phantasm technically isn't a hop, but I'll get into that because it works with hops, so we'll get to that.
Yes.
But yeah, we've got that one. We've also got Embracing Equity from Rivington and Sureshot, which uses Cryopop and Azaka BBC. We'll talk about what those are. And we have Brew One Pineapple from Vault City, Pomona Island, and BarthHaas X, which uses Spectrum, which I will tell you all about because I know a lot about that.
Thought you were the very right person to talk
about that. But I thought, do you want to crack open a beer? Because I thought I'd then talk about like hops and how hops can be used in different ways before we get into these specific products. Do you want to crack a beer to start?
The different hoppy products. But yeah, I've got a question. So like the X and the BarthHaas X, like what does that actually stand for?
It stands for collaboration.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm going to use my Phantom glass, my hot punk glass.
No, I don't have one of those. I've just got my usual.
I've got two now. Because I've got the original Hot Punk when that glass was released like ages ago. Yeah. And then I have the Hot Punk Festival one from this year that I managed to get.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, that's a nice smell for me.
Yeah, we'll get into what that is, why that is in a minute. Building the tension.
I know. I've got so many potential questions here. Yeah. So build it up first.
So let's start with a little overview of hops, right? So those little green plants, we know they go in beer. There are different ways that they can be used and preserved. So the cones that you see, you may have seen pictures of them. They grow on a vine. They can be used straight away as soon as they are harvested. That is if you've seen beers that are either called green hopped, wet hopped, fresh hopped. That uses the cone straight off of the vine. They have to be got into the beer for maximum effect within about 48 hours of being picked.
And we've done a whole episode on this. People should have listened to that.
If you haven't listened to our green hop episode, we will link it so that you can go back and have a listen about that. But there's festivals dedicated to this. The harvest of hops in the northern hemisphere is about September, October time, and in the southern hemisphere is February, March time. So the New Zealand and Australia harvest has only just kind of finished, and they're doing all of their thing. But those you have to use to get the same impact from those hops that you do from dried hops. You have to use about 5 times as much, and you're using the plant straight in to your beer. Now, if you think about those little cones, they've got lots of little leaves and lots of little vegetal bits. All of that is soaking up beer. So by doing that, you are going to get quite a bit of loss, because the more of that you put in, the more it's going to soak up the liquid, and you're going to end up with less beer at the end of it. So there are pros and cons to all of these different ways of using it. To prolong the use of these hops, they are dried, they are kilned. They're dried off, then the cones themselves can either be kind of squashed together carefully, because what's really important in the hops, what we're looking for to use, is the oils and the resins. It's not necessarily really those leafy parts. Although some people do need to use those. I will continue. So the cones themselves are dried out. They can be packed together, and some breweries still use what's called whole cone. They are dried, and you can store them for a long time as long as you keep them in the right conditions, keep them sealed up nicely, keep them cool. They can be used for several years once they are dried like that. Some breweries use them for tradition. Some breweries prefer to use the whole cone. They think that's the best way of doing it, even though it can lead to a lot of loss of liquid. Some breweries still use the whole cone because their kit requires it as a bit of a filter bed when they are draining the wort off. So there's different reasons for using those. What most breweries, what you'll see most people are using is the pelletized form. So the hops they're dried again, and then they are processed, and they're packed into little pellets. You may see T90 some places. That's your standard pellet, and it's kind of T90 because it's 90% of that hop. That hop cone is being used in one of those things. There are nowadays, with the wonderful technologies, all of these processes are proprietary, so don't expect a in-depth how it happens. But with these pellets, there are now versions and technology where you can get enriched pellets. So they are your pellet, but they've then got more of those oils and resins and the bits that you really want from a hop enriched into that pellet to make them even better. In this way, you may have seen on things, for example, on our Rivington and Sureshot one, we see Cryo and we see BBC. Both of those are proprietary names for processes that are enriching these pellets. BBC comes from a process that is from BarthHaas, and it was worked with the Boston Brewing Company, hence BBC. These are an enriched pellet. You're getting more out of it. You need to, and particularly for brewers, this is really good because you use less. So hops are quite an expensive product. They can be a large part of what you're using to brew. So if you're using less but still getting the impact that you need, jobs are good, and that's what you want to go for. So that's BBC. Cryo it's another process. You might have also seen Lupomax. These are done in like very cold temperatures. It's a way of extracting the bits that you really want, the oils and the resins, without losing anything, and then that can be put back into an enriched pellet to be used. Or we then go from pellets into liquid hops that are being developed nowadays. The joy of a liquid hop is that you've not got any of that vegetal matter, one, to suck up your liquid, or two, if you are dry hopping or putting hops in your beer for a long time, that can lead to grassy, vegetal, astringent flavours because of that vegetal matter, the longer you leave a hop in your beer. With a liquid hop, you've got none of that vegetal matter to cause that. So this is another way that brewers can get a really good hop impact in their beer. As there's no vegetal matter, there's nothing to suck up the liquid, you get more beer out of it. So these are all the types of things that are being used now to make breweries more efficient, to allow them to have the impact in flavours and aromas that they want. And then we get into something like Phantasm, which isn't even a hop. It's actually dried and powdered grape skins. And that is what is in VIP Person. It is being marketed as well in hop pellets. It's been mixed with hop pellets. So you can get Phantasm pellets. But it's Phantasm itself as a product is actually not a hop, but it can be added in. What that has on it is Thiols. I'm going to explain what a Thiol is in a minute, because
I was going to say, I was just
about that.
I just had a there was a group chat the other day where someone was like, "Oh, I'm predicting the next big thing in beer is going to be Thiols," because I think Pipeline just put out a collab with Phantom that was like a Thiol beer, and I was like, I've never heard of this before, and I was like, what is it? And then I started googling it, and I was like, he sent me a link, and I started watching that link, and then this brings me back to the whole, like, I am not a scientist at all, because like this guy was explaining it, and he was like, Thiols are, this is what they do, and this is, and then like the way of explaining it was like kind of not, it was like a political explanation, if you know what I mean, where it was like here's what it is, but also here's what it's a thing, and it does a thing, like this is the thing it does, but I didn't feel like it really explained like what it was. So I knew kind of when we were having this conversation, I was like, yay, Joe can teach me what that means.
Yeah. I mean, we're going high level here, people. This is all high level. Like, we're not going deep into the science and the technologies behind this. We're telling you the bits that you need to know as a beer drinker.
Yeah, I will say as well, the Boston Beer Company, that is like, people will know that as like
as
Sam Adams.
Yeah, I forgot to say that. Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna elaborate here. Like, that is basically is founded by Jim Koch, who's the founder of Sam Adams. So
yeah. So I've just had a little sip of this beer.
I didn't have mine.
I know, because I was talking a lot, so I thought we'd have a little sip. Now, when we opened this up, we were like, "Oh, this smells really interesting," and that really links to these Thiols.
Yes. But I also don't know if the smell that I'm getting. So the smell I'm getting is that, like, I sort of get a slight, like, stone fruity type smell, but I also get that vinous smell. But then I'm wondering if that is because I know that there's Nelson in it, and I know the base level of Phantasm being from the grape skin. So I don't know if that's kind of made up in my mind.
I think it's difficult to take these bits apart. Like, when I was teaching my beer classes, one of the things that people always say to me is, "Oh, I want to be able to pick out specific hops from beer." And I think sometimes that's just, that in general is quite difficult, because there are so many factors that lead up to what the final beer smells and tastes like.
I imagine it depends on the collaborations of the hops being used and how they're being used.
It depends on the mixtures of hops. It depends on when they were added. It depends on what malts are in there that could be playing along with that. It depends on the yeast. Whether the yeast has got a character. And now, as well, to add on to that, we've also now got this product Phantasm, which is a powder that can be added in that is making something different as well. Like, the toolbox of a brewer has so many different things that you can mix together to make wonder happen in your glass. Like, there's all the different things.
It then kind of goes back to the people of the why it's when flavours get out of control and there's all these different adjuncts and people go, why can't beer just taste like beer? And then you go, but actually, why can't beer just be beer? And it's like, okay, well,
but what is?
Do you even understand how many more hot products are there that are, like, developing and changing flavours?
Right.
Like,
so we're gonna choose like 5 hops and we're just gonna stay with those 5 hops, yeah?
Or do you kind of go,
what beer tastes like?
Or you kind of go, oh, don't use something like Phantasm for the reason why I'm gonna guess you're gonna go into in a minute about why people choose to use Phantasm and Thiols and all that. But from the limited understanding I got from this this video, but yeah, it's quite interesting. I think this is incredibly dry, so it then just, again, I feel like I just kind of liken that as well to, like, grapes, like a dry wine, like a dry white wine.
Yeah.
For me, it does give sort of, like, wine vibes because of that.
I really like it. And I'm generally not an IPA person, but
I don't think this tastes like a standard IPA.
No, I don't think it does.
I don't know. The thing is, I don't actually know. Based on the taste, I kind of don't know. If you gave this to me, didn't tell me what was on the can, you were just like, try this. I think I would know that it was like a pale beer. Like, I would guess a pale physically coloured beer. But I think I would struggle to give you, like, the specific style, because I don't think my brain would immediately want to say IPA based on, like, what my brain would go to. Right. I think I'd probably land on IPA because I'd be like, I don't really know what else. But it is a very interesting taste. And I think the dryness is so much more... It's almost more, like, amplified than the normal dryness that you get in a beer. I don't know, like, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think you can, like, necessarily apply that to the Phantasm on its own. I think
I know
the way that they brewed this beer, but
I don't know if that's what's, like, in my brain. If I'm kind of a bit like, oh, because I know they've used this
possibly
special product. Now all of a sudden, it's not just the fact that they've made, like, a very dry finish that is landing in a particular way. In my brain, I'm like, oh, maybe it's because of the Phantasm. I don't know, because I think what the Phantasm's made of and what you normally get from like a wine. That's why my brain's thinking that. It's so hard to know because I've never had a baseline of trying anything else with Phantasm in it.
Yeah. It could also just be the Nelson. So,
yeah. Well, that's it. Is my brain just goes...
And the Idaho 7. So this is... So not only has this got Phantasm in it, it's got Nelson 7 and Idaho 7 hops in it. So, you know. So what is a thiol? I hear you ask, Tori.
I mean, I am asking because I am confused.
So a thiol is a compound. It's an organic compound, and it is high in aromatic molecules, and they occur naturally just on things. And one of the things that thiols naturally occur on are white wine grapes, Sauvignon Blanc grapes specifically, and they can also be on hops. In the Marlborough region of New Zealand, researchers have found grapes in that area that are high in thiols on the grape skins. So this Phantasm, as we're calling it nowadays, was developed by a brewer who is in that region, and he was just interested because these white wines that he was drinking, these Sauvignon Blancs made from this area, had a real like punchy aroma. He was getting lots of passion fruit, and he just wondered why specifically those grapes were giving such an amazing aroma. And so he did a bit of research, went and had a look, and he found out that it was because of these thiols on the grapes that they were using. But when they make these wines, the grape skins are left behind. So he was like, this is really sad. Like, there's all this stuff that could be used, and it's just kind of going to waste at the end of it. Like, what can we do? And so he found that if you dried the leftover skins and then powdered them, you can then use them in beer to also boost this aroma and make the beer have an amazing stone fruit, juicy aroma. Of course, it's not just as simple as chucking a bit of this powder in and ta-da, amazing stone fruit flavour. Like, it depends on what other hops you're using, what kind of malt base you've got, like what style you're using. Much like with every other beer that is made, it all depends on what else is going on. So they brewers that have been using this have had to kind of experiment and are finding the best ways to use it. But they're finding that a juicy New England is a good place to start. Kind of a light malt base is a good place to start. And yeah, like the hops that you use will also help bolster that. They generally think IPAs are the way to go, but there have been some hopped lagers that they found it's worked really well in. It's still kind of being played around with. There is now a hop pellet that you can get that has been enriched with Phantasm that some brewers may be using. So they're going to be trying out that way of doing it. But also, I saw a talk at the Brewers Congress back in December where you don't necessarily need this powder. You can also use some thiolized yeast, which will help bring out the thiols that may be on the hops. And that will bring out that punchy aroma. So and they were saying by using this yeast, you could use less hops, which obviously, hop merchants are a little bit upset about that. But there are different ways of doing this. So if you see something that's got Phantasm in it, if you see something about thiols, it's about adding this punchy aroma by doing different processes.
And I'm going to guess that Phantoms is like a hop enriched one because
I'm going to say
because it is listed against their hops.
In the hops. And London Ale 3 is not a thiolized yeast strain, I don't believe.
No, yes. They've got the malts, which are lager oats, golden naked oats.
Yeah, so that's quite a light malt base there they've used.
And then they've done Idaho 7, Nelson, and Phantasm is what's listed against the hops. So I'm guessing it probably is like a hop enriched.
I think it could be the enriched. They could have the enriched pellets,
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see what it would do in something like a saison. Look, I wonder how how it would behave in that.
I suppose it depends on whether the saison yeast plays ball with it or not.
It's interesting to see how it could just interact with the different styles and, like you said, the different yeasts and the different malts. And yeah, I mean, I'm quite enjoy this. I think it's quite nice.
Yeah, it's a very tasty beer.
And I feel like I understand Thiols a bit better, because I feel like before it sounded like a really, I don't know, like really either super scientific or like some like made up cult word or something like that. I think I've been watching too many like documentaries on like cults and certain ones having code names for things that I'm like, oh my god, and that's what my brain goes to. But yeah, I feel like I know it so much better, because the last guy I watched trying to explain it, like I said, it was very much just like Thiols, here's what they do. They enhance the aromas and the flavours and all that, and then it was like, so how do they do that? Well, and then I just felt like I didn't come out, like it was so scientific that I came out of it being like, yeah, I don't feel like I act like, if I was a scientist maybe I'd get it, but I was like, yeah, I have no idea. And I feel like you were just able to explain that in a way that I actually get it.
Well, I got it from an article, a very nice article about it on hop culture, so I'll link that in the show notes. So if you want to go and have a read of that and see where I got my information from, have a look there.
Excellent. I do think that hop culture's got such like a good index of knowledge there, because I know that I've like looked up so much stuff on there, and also
one time they put us in their top 10 podcasts, so thanks hop culture.
It's also true, but it's not
why we like them. They're just
fair,
really good.
They've
obviously got very good taste.
I completely forgot about that. Like honestly, and I guess that's like, I'm being genuine. Like I genuinely forgot about that. So it's not like I was even like I'm recommending that. I forgot about that till right now when you just said that. You're right, they did. But it's not like, now you know that's not a product placement. She's like, I just didn't. I was just like, they are just genuinely good. So cool. No, that was nice. I look forward to finishing the rest of this one.
Yeah, fun.
Cool. Should we move on to the next one?
Let's move on to our next one.
I'll put this
to the
side
for now. It's got a couple of different things in it.
Yeah, this is the.
In it again.
What I want to know
is
I do want to know, like, and this is probably something that maybe we don't know the answer fully. How many hops are needed to go into one hop pellet?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I don't know.
If you knew I was going to ask that, then you should have been prepared.
I told you. I like that.
But you did say it's proprietary,
I said
so
all
I was
of these
like,
things are proprietary. Like, I'll tell you in October after I've been to Yakima and I've seen the processing plant. How's that?
So when you initially were talking about it, I was like, I don't want to forget this, so I jotted it down and then I started doing a quick Google, and it was like, the stuff that came up was learning to homebrew whole hops versus pellet hops conversion. And so the conversion of fresh hops to pellet hops is 5-1. It takes 1 ounce of pellet hops to achieve the same as 5 ounces of hops.
Yeah.
But then something else said 1 ounce of pellets to 1.1 ounce of whole hops. So I'm like, I don't know.
That's incorrect.
It's times 5. It depends on which homebrew.
I mean, I suppose it depends on what the hop is and what you want to achieve. But generally, it's 5 times the amount. Is what I've always heard from, and like I have some fairly experienced brewers around me here in Kent that use fresh hops fairly regularly, and you know they've always said 5 times what you would use in a pellet.
That's good enough for me. I'll go with that. Yeah. I was just like, as you were talking about it, I was like, well, when you were talking about like the pellets, I was like, I really want to know. And then you went, but we don't know all of it because some of it's proprietary. And I was like, oh, she's not going to know. No. But I want to ask anyways. And then I was like, let me Google just in case. And it's not easy to find. Right, Rivington.
Something interesting as well while you're pouring that, that I didn't think about until I was watching a webinar about frozen fresh hops from the US. Frosies.
I will never not call them frosies.
I know. I love that name. Was about picking windows, and like, so obviously not all the hops come in at the same time, right? So you know, one variety will come at this time and another one might come at a different time, and as you've only got that 48-hour window with fresh hops, there was a point where you couldn't put. I'm probably going to pick the wrong ones now, but you couldn't put like Citra and Mosaic in together fresh because they didn't they weren't ready at the same time.
You're going to have someone that's like,
someone's gonna be
Joanne,
like,
that's not actually.
Whichever, I'm not up on when they actually appear.
They're like, how do you not know all this? You should have done your research, Joe.
It's just because this is something that came into my mind just now from something that I remember seeing. And I hadn't thought about how they grow at different times. No, they come up at different times. So sometimes you couldn't put the particular ones you wanted together fresh. But now where they've got the freezing technology, there are options to put those different hops together fresh, and it's just a different type of. You get different results from using those rather
some
than
of it as well. I think if I remember correctly from when we actually had the conversation about the Frosies, some of it as well is like that technology almost enables people to make green hop beers year round if it depending on when they froze them. Like they would have the ability to be able to do something like that because they could take them and as long as they could freeze them quick enough, they could then use it for that. Now, I don't know if they actually have put that implemented.
I remember them saying that. I've not seen anything about it since.
Exactly.
But also, I know that because they're frozen, you need to keep them frozen the entire time until you're about to use them. And they will, like, hops will defrost quite quickly because they're quite delicate. And I know there have been problems trying to get them over into Europe, like US frozen hops, fresh hops into Europe, because of that, keeping that cold chain, but also due to cost.
Yeah.
Like, to keep them cold chained all the way costs a lot of money. So there's been some problems with that. I don't know whether it's as widespread as they would have first liked because of the costs of it.
It's interesting though, because I thought that was a really interesting concept where it's like you could start I also think, like, to some degree, certain areas of the US probably don't have as many like green hop, like we had discussed before when we talked about green hops. It's like, from my experience, I'd never really seen a green hop beer until I came over here, but I think maybe some parts of the country, like the US are so much more like used to, maybe closer to Yakima or wherever they are having the hop farms, might see that more commonly than maybe where I was from. And so, like, that was just really interesting, like the idea of like, you could see British breweries making green hop beers with like American hops, and that was like the whole thing of what they wanted. But I didn't know if that ever ended up sort of like in theory that was part of what they were talking about. Whether that's actually been rolled out or if they've been able to, like you said, it might just been cost prohibitive, especially in the time like this, where everyone's trying to cut costs where they can. It might just be something that's like there's no market there to justify the spend, and it's just cost prohibitive now. Maybe in few years' time there'll actually be something that's enabling that to be a lot better. But I
mean, the technology's there. There's also a bit of a like wet hop beer. I know some people are just like kind of like always like green hop beer. Wet hop beer.
I would like love to try a green hop beer that's not British hops, because I think I've only ever tried it with British hops.
My first green hop beer was a wet hopped beer from like in Oregon. I was in Astoria, Oregon, at Fort George. And I just happened to be there at the right time for it to be the right season. P.S. Fort George. I don't know if they still do it now, because this was...
You're like, P.S. shout out to Fort George.
Shout out to Fort George.
Shout out to Fort George.
Happened to be, like, my ship stopped in Astoria. Me and a friend went, we're going to go get some beers. Oh, here's a Google, craft beer place. Cool, we're going to go there. Went and had some lunch, and a tasting board that had, I want to say 12 to 16 different beers on it. One was a wasabi ginger beer.
Oh, interesting.
It was a wasabi beer. But it was, and about 4 or 5 were wet hopped, and it was like I say, these are our regulars, And then this is a wet hop version of that, and I was just like,
oh,
and
you
it
know
was
how I
like, it was
feel
so
about that, having
exciting.
the comparisons. That's exciting to me. That's
It was
exciting.
a good afternoon. Then we went then we walked past the school where Kindergarten Cop was filmed, and then we went to the Goonies house. What
that's
a
pretty
day!
cool. That's pretty
What
great.
a day!
How do you top that, really?
Right?
Like, you don't. It's very few things. We didn't say as well, the VIP person, I mean, that was obviously, she hazy.
We didn't actually say what it looked like.
We didn't
just
really
talking
say
about what it
anything.
smelled like.
And tasted
she's
like.
She hazy.
She hazy. The head was decent.
Yeah.
Didn't last as long as this one, the Embracing Equity. But also, this one also, she hazy as well.
Hazy.
I would say, like,
hazy.
she has that, even though it's a normal IPA, she has that dipper look. In my opinion, she has that dipper look. And she has that dipper smell.
Yeah.
And it has a beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful taste. Beautiful fruity taste.
Yeah, it's nice. So this one...
She juicy. That's what I say. She juicy.
She juicy. She juicy and thick.
And it's that, like, that, yeah, oof. And that's that, like, smoothness. It's that lovely, like, smoothness without being, like, super creamy. It's just that right level. And then there is that little bit of, like... There's, like, a little bit of bitterness towards the back end of it, which is, like, really nice, because I think if you're a person that... Part of your problem with, like, New England and stuff is they're just too fruity. If you don't like it, you're like, I'll just have some juice if I want that. I feel like this is that nice balance of, like... There are those fruity flavours, like those, like, stone fruity flavours, but then also that bitterness at the end is just a really nice balancing touch, which I never thought I would say about bitterness, but she nice.
And we'll also point out this is called Embracing Equity, and it was Rivington and Sureshot's International Women's Day beer for this year, brewed with Bolton Beer Girls and Preston Beer Girls.
And the category was Embracing Equity.
Eleganza.
So, I am embracing equity. It is great. Love it. Absolutely love it.
I'm enjoying it.
And to be fair, this is one that I was like, I want to buy. And then when we put in a big order with Rainville, we had all these... Rainville was the store that had all the things that we needed, so we put in the order there. Always had really good experience there. And then I was like, oh, I really want this, but I don't... What we were originally going to use it for, we were like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. It's fine. So I didn't put it in the basket. And I didn't put a few other things in the basket. And then you were like, we could actually use this for the hot product episode. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I already placed my order. And then I emailed saying, hey, really sorry. I meant to have this in my basket and I didn't. Is there any way I can add it before you send it out? And then I could just do it as like a collection. And the guy was so nice. He was like, just put it in, mark it as collection. I'll get it in there. And I was like,
nice.
Yes.
Like,
and
seriously.
It came. So it was like the best excuse to be able to buy it, because I was already spending so much money that I was sort of like, I can't just afford to...
Order.
We did a big podcast order, and I was like, I almost can't afford to just buy it because I want it. But then because we had a reason for it, I was like, yes, get in. I've got it. Yeah. And I'm glad we did, because this is a really tasty beer.
It's tasty. For a good cause. Obs. Obs. And so this has got...
Ooh. Peachiness came through, and I was like, yes. Yes,
so this has got a Zaka BBC and Cryo in it.
I love a Zaka. I'm just saying that anytime. I know that if I see a Zaka, I'm going to love it.
Yeah. So that's one of ours. That's one of ours.
I love it. I want to have it. Never a problem. At least that for me is like a guiding light of like when I'm looking at hops and I'm like, oh, let's see, which beer do I want? Like some of these hazies all seem the same. And then I'm like, Azaka, yes, get it.
So Azaka is a dual purpose hop. So if you've ever seen that anywhere, what does dual purpose mean?
What does dual purpose mean?
Dual purpose mean?
I don't know.
So nowadays, our brewers are doing their thing and they're trying all the things out. But it used to be that they would categorize the hops into bittering hops and aroma hops. So bittering hops have higher alpha acids, and it's the alpha acids that when you chuck them in the boil, they are isomerized, which adds bitterness through that boiling process. So you want something with a high alpha acid content to add bitterness to your beer. An aroma hop will have lower alpha acids, but will add those lovely aromas. you don't want to put those in at the beginning of your boil because it's all going to boil off, because it's the like aromatic volatile compounds. They're just going to get like boiled away if you do it too early. So Azacca is a dual purpose. It could be used for either, but nowadays brewers are using hops wherever they fancy, so it's less, there's less of this kind of, this is a bittering hop and this is an aroma hop. Like, we do what we want, so that's what that means.
Like, is there any, like, if a brewer, if somebody was, like, newer to brewing and they were just kind of, like, learning the different products, like, and how to utilise different products, like, what's the best way to kind of learn the best way to use certain products, or even just the best way to utilise, like, certain, obviously some of it is, like, to be a brewer, you kind of have to have, like, trial and error that in the first place, but, like, when it comes to different products, like, would somebody contact their supplier and be like, how would you use this pellet? Or how would you use this the best? Is it better adding it at this part? Is it better for dry hopping?
So your supplier should be an expert in the products. They should be able to tell you the best way to use it. You should be able to have that discussion with them about, you know, I want to do this. Is this the product for me? What's the benefits of using this product for me? You know, as home brewers, the malt miller can give you that information. You know, your homebrew shop may be able to give you that information. It all depends on what you want to do as well. Like I said, if you want bitterness, you need a hop with high alpha acids. So you're going to find one of those. You can't just be going, I'm going to take this one and plop this in. You've got to have the right kind of hop to do the right sort of thing. It's like being like, oh, I'm going to use SARS in this juicy IPA. SARS is not going to, you know, it is a classic Czech Pilsner hop. It is, you know, it's supposed to be spicy and, you know, woodsy.
Whoa.
And, you know.
We're going to be talking about this at some point, maybe. Don't give it all away now.
Don't give it all away now. I picked the lovely SARS hop because it's so traditional, and you know it's got everyone knows what it's. You know, it's got a purpose.
Spoiler alert! It's got a purpose, and you'll probably learn what that purpose is eventually. I mean, it might be part of this massive order that we've
right. But also, SARS is very different from Mosaic. You're not going to use it for the same thing because this is why we have so many different hops, because they all do different things. So you need to have a look and see what sort of aromas and flavours is this going to add to my beer and pick the appropriate one. But also, you know, trying the different beers and seeing what it does is a good way to do it.
I also just want to say, like, when you think the head on your beer on this particular one is dying, give it a swirl.
Oh, yeah.
She refreshes so quick and it looks beautiful. You're like, oh, let's just do a swirly swirl. And then you go, boom, it looks beautiful again. Like, absolutely lovely. And then I decided to have this out of my full circle glass as well, because my international women's glass from next. So I was like, I've got themed glasses for the other ones. I don't have a themed one for this, so I will just use an international women's glass.
You're so good with your themed glasses.
I love a good theme.
I just pick a glass that I like drinking out of.
Look at, like, if you're looking at the video, like, come on.
Oh, that's so lovely. Back to your beloved Azacca.
Oh, love Azacca.
Azacca should be giving you mango, apricot, and pears.
I do get like probably the mango bit, maybe a bit apricot.
Obviously, depends on what else is going on in there. And it is classically used for dry hopping because it has
which makes sense. Aromas. It's double dry hopped.
Yeah. And it is a BBC pellet. So as we said, that is a enriched pellet that was developed with the Boston Beer Company. You might also see it called a pure hop pellet. And they have... they may also be called Super T90s. That's exciting.
Super T90s.
Super T90s.
I didn't know if you were just saying like T90s, but like they're really great, so I'm going to describe them like
no.
that. They are actually called Super T90s.
You've got to think of it as a Super T90, right?
Love that. And then, do you have anything to say about the cryo pop?
Right. So,
cryo hops in general.
Azacca BBC is an enriched pellet in Azacca. That is the variety. Cryo pop is a blend of several different hops all together. It's not a hop variety in and of itself. It is a blend. And the thing with cryopop is that there was a bunch of research done, because as I was saying, when if you put a hop in too early into that boil process, because the hops generally get added in to the boil or at the end of the boil, or you might dry hop it afterwards. There's lots of different points where you can add hops, but one of the classic ways is in the boil. So when that happens, bits of it will, the aromatic compounds, the volatiles are going to be blown off. They're just going to disappear.
Sounds so aggressive.
It is. Think about a boil. A boil is aggressive. So those delicate, beautiful aromas and things like the delicate oils that you're getting the lovely aromas from, they're just boiled away. So you're losing all of that great stuff. Right, sad. So some research was done into what you may have seen referred to as survivable compounds. There's lots of different compounds in hops, various different things, and some research was done into how long it takes for those different compounds to be boiled away in that boiling process, or to disappear at heat and whatever. Through that, the brewing community discovered which are the survivable compounds and the things that we really want to be available in our beer, so that we get those lovely aromas and flavours. And through that process, this hop blend has been created through finding the different varieties that have these survivable compounds in them, and so that you can get that lovely aroma and flavour profile in yours. And that's what cryopop is.
So what you're saying is cryopop is like the cockroach of the hop world.
Yeah. It is the cockroach. It survived.
It is the cockroach / Twinkie of the hop world.
Now, when it came out, I remember there being massive fanfare about how
I was going to say, this is not massively old, is it? Because
cryopop's not that old. I think
we got the Brew York set. That was the wrestling.
That was 2021.
You got to try them at Bigfoot Festival, the set of the Brew York ones, and I want to say Brew York was the first. Were they the first ones, at least in the UK, utilising that, or was that just because they did the set that it just seemed like?
I think they may have been people, they may have been early adopters of it. There was a big fanfare from the company that produces cryopop. They were very helpful with that. There was definitely a representative at the tasting that I went to, chatting about it.
There was a representative at Bigfoot, yes.
Yes, and I feel like it was a big thing, but you don't hear much about it nowadays. Not as much. So
I was going to say, you don't, or at least when it's used, it's not. I think I've seen it a fair amount in beers if I'm looking at the ingredients, but I want to say that. I mean, I guess it's kind of similar to when you see my mind is going blank at the moment. What's the hop that's the Thiols, that's the one.
Thiols,
I think it's kind of similar to Thiols came out, it was launched, it was Siren and a few other breweries were the first in Europe to be able to make the beer with it. And then it was this big thing, and then all of a sudden now you see Thiols and things and no one really kind of thinks about it. And it's kind of the same thing with the cryopop. I remember it being a massive deal with Brew York, and then just kind of being it's in stuff and it's good, but
I think it's like a spice rack, right? It's the brewer's equivalent to a spice rack. And this was a new one. This is really exciting. Now it's just in your spice rack and you'll chuck it in where you need it.
Although I kind of thinking of that analogy, I do kind of wish that in you don't often see people. This is such a tangent, but you don't actually see people being there's a new spice out there, guys. When's the last time? I don't think I've ever in my life been guys, there's a new spice. I kind of wish there was now, because hops are just so fascinating, because it seems all the time there's always a new one, but you don't just go, hey guys, you see that new herb? Do you see that new spice? Oh, this is insane.
So I suppose the thing with new hops, that's a good thing to talk about.
So they also crossbreed them and stuff, don't they?
Yeah. So they're always developing new ones, and the reason they've got to develop new ones is because of climate change. Hello, we're killing the planet, and because we're trying to get higher yields of them. You know, we want them to be there so that we can make beer with them. You need to be able to grow enough for the demand that's there. You need to keep it sustainable, keep it available. And, you know, there are diseases and things out there that are going to kill those plants off. And if it does it too often and to too many, then you're not going to have enough for what's needed. Also, when you look at, like, you know, really traditional hops, let's go back to our friend SARS.
We're going to have nothing to talk about by the time this episode happens.
And Tettnanger and Hallertau, like, these are your original hops. They're bred from literally the plants that were first found and discovered as hops. They're traditional. They've been going that way for years and years and years. The problem with that is they got used to the climate and the conditions that they were originally growing in, and that's changing. And so they're not doing as well. They're not thriving because they haven't changed since we first had them. So there are places, there's the Society for Hop Research in Germany, there's the Experimental Hop Research Program in the US, there's Y College here in the UK. Like, they're all trying to develop hops that can produce the same aromas and flavours as the hops that we love, but that aren't thriving in our changing climates and our changing needs. So there has to be new things, because at some point we're going to lose some.
So I've just done a quick Google because I was trying to remember the name of what I was thinking of, because I want to say about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago now. I don't remember. I want to say it was literally probably about a year ago. Goose Island had contacted me on Instagram about one of the beers that they were making, and they wanted kind of send something to try and just sort of get feedback on.
Yeah.
And they were using something. They were using a newer hop. I want to say it's called Tango.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, this Tango hop was one that is basically grown because it is meant to be much more hearty.
Yep.
So it can sort of withstand the harsh changes in climate, like whether too cold, too hot. It is a lot more basically sustainable that way.
They've got better root structures. Root structures are a big thing with hops.
I think it's quite a decent beer as well. Yeah. I know people have their thoughts on Goose Island aside. I don't have any issues with Goose Island. If I'm going to a pub and I'm gonna drink something that's technically macro anyways, it would probably be something like a Goose Island or a Guinness. And I really quite like trying some of the stuff that Goose Island put out that's not just their straight stuff that they do, some of the more interesting things. And I thought this was quite interesting that they had taken a leap to try this more sustainable sort of hop. And yeah, it was pretty decent. I wouldn't say it was lacking anything. It was fairly well balanced. It was just a nice flavour. It was a very nice sessionable flavour from what I remember. But yeah, it's you talking about the changes in climate. I was like, let me just Google that quick, because I remember Goose Island having done that, and I just wanted to try to find the name of the hop, and I'm fairly certain Tango was the one.
Yeah, I would say so, because that's one of the ones that I saw at the the Society for Hop Research in Germany back in September.
Yes, it is. I've just found the article is Tango.
Yeah. And that's one of the ones they're trying to develop to be a replacement for these ones that we're losing.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well, because there was another article. So what I've stumbled across while trying to find the hop was Goose Island had also worked to make a beer called Hail Hydro, and that was made with aerofarms, which is they are like an indoor growing facility focused on basically making agriculture making that kind of a bit more. The high level is they're trying to kind of grow hops in these indoor situations to make them more sustainable. It's really
it might have been in
I haven't read the whole article, and this is quite an old article. It's from 3 years ago now. I just quickly scrolled through, and it's that's really interesting as well. It's just the way they're trying to go about growing hops now to make them in a way that's more sustainable for brewing. So yeah, I mean, give that a Google. So I definitely if you can look into all of it, look into Aero Farms, look into Tango, look into like how they're making more heartier hops and how they're going about that. It's quite interesting to read.
Is real.
Yeah.
And it is destroying our crops.
Also, I feel like the point still remains though, of like you don't see new spices being made and new herbs being made. So it's like, what happens when climate change takes away our cinnamon or something like that? What's going to happen?
You're going to be so sad.
Which I would be. I've just discovered that I think I like chai teas, like iced chai tea lattes.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, so I never
those?
really.
No. Cinnamon in a cup,
so
girl.
it's not that I didn't like them.
Right.
It's that I know I liked chai as like an overall spice. This is so far removed from the very serious thing we were just talking about. But so I went to go get my free reusable cup from a chain coffee shop that I don't normally use them anymore. I use that when I'm on the road traveling. They are my coffee shop. Like, so my options go support an independent coffee shop first and foremost, or make your own. But if I'm on the road and I don't have that option, my second choice, if there's no like craft shop, like indie shops around, is I will go, cool, I guess I'll go to a Starbucks. Like if it's a road stop, and I will make sure to go to a stop that has that. We already discussed our favourite stops. That is part of the reason why. So yeah, for that reason I have like the app and everything, and it was like, here, you can get this new sustainable mug. Haven't gone to Starbucks in like months, and I was like, I want that mug though. Just because I'm just like, I want it. I just want it for free. Like, great. And so I thought, I don't really want a coffee. I've already had a coffee. Let me try an iced chai tea latte, which I didn't even know was an option before, but I was trying to find something that was an iced drink because you had to get an iced drink. And that's all I really drink anyways. And I was like, but what can I get that's not... I think frappuccinos are for children. I will say that very confidently.
I had a frappuccino the other day. I had coffee in my frappuccino.
Don't worry. No, I've already I looked my engineers. I looked my engineers in the face and I went, frappuccino. I went, what do you want? I'm going to Starbucks. And they went, a cookies and cream frappuccino. And I went, frappuccinos are for babies, but I'll get it for you anyways.
Oh, you're so judgmental lately. What's going on?
I don't know. I was feeling sassy, and then I gave it to him. I literally asked just for cookies and cream, and I gave that to him, and he went, "Is there coffee in this? I don't like coffee." And I was like, "You're getting a Starbucks because you want caffeine. Just get a milkshake." That was my argument. I was like, if you're not getting coffee in it. Yeah. Then that is for babies, and get a milkshake.
Literally, I'm like, yeah, they're like, coffee.
At least you're getting coffee. At least you're getting coffee in it. I was like, I did not ask for coffee. I asked for a baby chino, and that's what you got. But yeah, that aside, I went there to get this, and I was like, what can I get? And then I was like, I'll just try an iced chai tea latte. Discovered. Fucking love it. I've made my own now, 2 days in a row.
Nice.
But not like I still have my coffee, and then that's my afternoon treat is a chai tea, an iced chai tea latte.
Right.
Love it. So good. What am I going to do if they're like,
we're at cinnamon? Cinnamon is gone. I mean, I'm sure they must be, keeping an eye on that sort of thing.
That is like... I think we need to start considering that. I mean, we've already... we are so overdue, everyone considering that. But also, if I may pitch... This matters, guys. Think of the cinnamon. But yeah, no, it's to be serious about it. So yeah, no, it is really interesting to look into all the ways that they're being sustainable about it. And I very recommend giving that a Google. And I very recommend making yourself iced chai tea lattes, because they are great. Unless you don't like cinnamon, then don't have one.
Don't do it. Yeah, don't do it.
On to the last one.
On to our last beer.
Unless do you have anything else to say about this one before we revisit?
It was delightful. If you can get your hands on it, go get it.
Absolute fan.
All right, we are moving on to Brew One Pineapple.
I love pineapple.
It's a dry hop sour beer made by Vault City, Pomona Island, in collaboration with BarthHaas X.
I love Vault City. I love Pomona Island. I love pineapple. I am excited. I'm ready. It already smells like pineapple.
That's a good pour sound too.
I know. I love going for the ASMR. That is what I go for. Oh, she's super foamy though.
She is super foamy.
Real foamy. Ooh, it's a bit, the smell is not immediately as pineapple as I expected. From the can, it was pineapple.
I'm getting the...
From the glass.
The sour base.
I think that's what it is. It's like there's almost like a... I think it is that sour, that acidity almost that comes a bit through in the aroma. With that like light sweet pineapple kind of floating atop it. Right, I'm going to take a sip before we start talking about it. Weird, because on first sip, I kind of expected it to be more sour, maybe. But actually, this isn't a bad thing, I almost expected from the aroma for it to be a little bit more aggressive with the acidity, and it's not. It's quite... No,
it's nicely...
It's quite light, actually. Yeah. I was expecting it to be, from the look of it as well, quite full.
It's not one of the... They've not called it a session sour. 6.5% as well, so...
Yeah, it doesn't taste like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't taste 6.5.
It's nice.
6.5, so it's
very drinkable. Like...
I feel like it needs sun, though. Like, without the sun.
100%.
But then I also think that's because I'm biased, because I think anything with pineapple just, like, needs the sun. Because I just think, like, cocktail vibes, pineapple vibes.
You know what? Brew 1 is the hop for you, then, because Brew 1 is literally just, like, pineapple.
I do like pineapple. It's great. This is really, like I said, it's surprising that I almost thought it was going to be more mouthfeel, which is, like, fine. Because when it comes to sours, I'm quite happy with it being sort of on the thinner side.
Yeah.
Obviously, unless you're expecting it to be like a smoothie sour or something. But I feel like it's the right level, because sometimes I think with sours, if it's too much mouthfeel for me, I know some people prefer that, but for me, if there's too much mouthfeel, it can almost make that acidity a little bit more harsh and unenjoyable. Whereas like when it's sort of lighter on the mouthfeel, it kind of like just hits different. I don't know. There's no better way for me to describe it other than it just hits different, and it doesn't become too offensive.
Yeah.
I think when you're making a smoothie sour, there are things that balance that out so that it's not as much of a concern. This is
usually got a bit more of a sweet element and a fruity element to it,
But yeah, actually, and the more sips I have of it, the more you get the tartness to it as well, which is, it's nice.
Yeah. So this has taken us into new developments, new technologies. We're looking at liquid hops on this one. So it's used Spectrum. Spectrum in particular is a dry hopping product. And as I said, it's liquid. It's not got that vegetal matter in it. It's also not got any like carrier, like it's not got a solvent base or an alcohol base in it. It is just 100% hops. So that's really good for brewers because they can chuck it in and it will do the same thing as if you were using pellets, but you don't lose any beer, you don't end up having to clean up trub, which gathers at the bottom. You don't risk that adding that vegetal grassy astringent note that you could get from the vegetal matter. It's a really good thing, and especially in like the current climate where you want to be as efficient as possible, liquid hops are a good way to go. There's also a product that's for the whirlpool, which is called Incognito. We used it with Elusive when I got
to dump it with some sexy gloves.
You did. So that's, it's formulated slightly differently because obviously in the whirlpool there's still some heat in that beer. Spectrum is formulated for on the cold side of brewing. So there's different products, but they're really good things. And actually, like how I always say that Mosaic smells like broccoli.
Yes.
So when I have a hop pellet that is Mosaic, I can smell that broccoli.
When you do the like rubbing.
Yeah, I can't remember whether it was Spectrum Mosaic or Incognito. I think it was Incognito.
I remember you telling me this, and I think I want to say it was Incognito.
I think it was Incognito. When I smelt the Mosaic Incognito, I didn't get that broccoli element to it because you're missing that vegetal part. So it's it's another tool for brewers to use.
I will say, like, when we're talking about, just because it's not relevant necessarily to the liquid hop products, but when you're mentioning that we use that sort of during the elusive Brave Noise brewing, I got to dump that in, that's cool. What's funny as well is, like, so of all the brew days that I've got a chance to do, a lot of times it was pretty much like pellets that were being used, or like if there wasn't pellets being used, it's already sort of like weighed out and measured, and it was just a kind of like a dump it in. My favourite thing, I think, about the brew day, I know you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Like, one of my favourite things about the brew day at Elusive was, like, there was, like, the brick of, like...
of cones.
Yeah, the brick of hops.
Yeah, so
and,
the
like,
kit that they
I
use
got
at
to just
Elusive...
mallet the shit out of it. It was so great. Like, it was cool. And then you start ripping it apart, and it's just, like... It was a side of brewing that, again, like... As I said before in the past numerous times, I kind of feel like to appreciate beer, you have to sort of at least understand the brewing process to a base level. If not, like, actually get to go and participate in a brew day. And I think even getting to do a task like that about, like, weighing the hops out yourself as well is something that, like, also, when you're doing the work of breaking apart one of these fucking bricks of hops is so fun and interesting, and I'd never gotten to do that before, and so this was the first time, and it was just like...
So that's an interesting thing, right? So the thing about cones, so this was a dried brick of cone hops.
Literally like a brick.
The kit that Elusive use, they need to put some of the whole cone in because they use it as a filter bed. So they still get the bricks of dried cones, and they come vacuum packed in a foil package, and sometimes they are very tightly packed, and you literally have to get like a screwdriver and a mallet and break them apart.
Like, I tried, it's quite thick as well, like I tried to just rip some bits off that, like, on its own, but like the technique was really like hammer a chunk off and then take that part and rip that apart, but if it was too thick, like in its current form, it must have been like a good few inches, like, thick, because I can only think in inches, so I don't know how to explain it any other way. Good few inches thick, and then it's like, you can't really rip that off as it is, and there's no room to even kind of, like, dig your nails in. Even with nails, you can't really dig in and do it. You have to use, like, a chisel and a mallet, and it was like, once you kind of would chisel a chunk off, then you're like, cool, I can rip this up and break this up. But it's like, I could only describe it as, like, in school, did you ever make things with like pulp paper? It's like you'd rip paper apart and create like stuff like that. That's kind of like how it looked almost, as like pulp paper, but like really thick. And so you have to kind of create that and like rip it apart, but you couldn't do that without a hammer and mallet. And that was like a fun thing that I will 100% remember having done, because I was like, I've never done this before. It was my first time doing it, and it was just like, this is an experience, and you really appreciate the work that goes into, and you have to get it done, like, to a degree, you kind of have to get it done relatively quickly, depending on when you start doing it, because you're like, shit, I've got to add this in X amount of time, so it's like, if you haven't done it, like, with enough time, you've got to be like, go, go, go. But actually, I mean, you know, we didn't have that problem. But just thinking ahead of like, if you're not, if you've not planned appropriately and weighed it out in advance, it's like, oh, that could be a problem, because it's not the easiest until you start to get the hang of it. It's not the easiest to rip apart, and sometimes it's deceptive. You're like, I could just rip this apart, and then you try and you're like, it's not moving.
And so, like, the thing with whole cone is that obviously that takes up a lot of space, so they are compacted in quite tightly to try and take up less space. Pellets will then obviously take up less space again because they're smaller, but then your liquid products are going to take up less space again because you need less of it because it's more concentrated. And also, you know, thinking about carbon footprint and all of that, and delivery and shipping from different places, there are different pros and cons for all the different types.
The only way I can kind of describe like the pellets is like, if you have a dog, it reminds me of like
animal
dog food
pellets. Yeah,
or like rabbit food. It looks like rabbit food. And I remember, I feel like seeing it the first time, I was like, oh, this just looks like rabbit food. But then
once
I've never
that
had one.
hits,
My niece has had one.
because obviously that's a compacted,
Yeah.
kind of broken up hop. So then once that hits the water, that's going to break up, and then you end up with this kind of hop sludge in the bottom that you've got to clean out.
Nice.
Or if you're using cones, like, you end up with all the leaves everywhere, and the bract. Liquid, sometimes it gets a bit stuck on things, but generally it should be soluble in the beer. So, way to go, liquid hops.
Way to go. You did it. You guys did it. Yeah, I think, there's a lot of cool, there's just like a lot of cool ways that you can, a lot of cool forms, and it's like they all kind of, like you said, they all have their own pros and cons, and it's sort of like, in terms of sustainability, like how it's going to keep things sustainable, but also continue to keep them interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, from a like a beer drinker's perspective, it doesn't necessarily matter to us, like, what type of hops are going into the beer, as long as it tastes good. So this is really just, if you see the wording on a can, you're like, what is that? This kind of gives you a bit of a rundown of what some of those things might mean. And it's just, more spices on the rack, more colours in the paint tin for brewers to create with.
I wish there were more spices on the rack. There's never enough spices on the rack. But yes.
Use that analogy. You've really got stuck on that now.
I'm really stuck on the spices on the rack. But you are absolutely correct. Yeah, I mean, it's like, again, can you have too many seats at the table? Nah.
Never.
As we said, never.
Embracing equity. Getting everybody at the table.
Embracing equity.
Just making our own table.
Yeah, making our own table with all the best stuff, and we're like, brew one, come over here. Cryo pop. You may. Thiols, sure. You're not technically one, but that's fine. There's space for you. It's cool as well.
You're a friend.
You're a friend. You're an ally.
You're a ally.
You may as well. I love it. Oh, this is great. And I think it fits the whole intro of like hops come in all shapes and sizes, and that's exactly the way that we want our community to be. So, like, it would be boring if everything was the same. Like, it's really, if there was no variety, life would be so boring.
We'd all be drinking the same beer.
Yeah, I think, my departing thought on this is we need more spice variety. Bring back more spices.
Entirely not about what the episode was about.
I think create new spices. But yes, continue to make amazing. I can't wait to see what will be next.
Yeah.
Like what advancements will be out there next.
Like,
so imagine some of it as well probably is like, some of it is so, for certain breweries and smaller level breweries, while it may, the positive is, it's a smaller shelf space, or it can give you sort of like really great variety. Some people, it might go, oh, a particular product might be too expensive for them and what they yield at the moment, so maybe it's not sort of viable for them at the time being. And I think like part of that is maybe, in future it might be that advances are made and it becomes cheaper and more accessible to get those things, so that even smaller breweries can utilize them. So it will just be really interesting to see what kind of new products and new hops are out there. And I think we've talked about it before. I really love how like new hops, it's like they always have that like scientific, like that scientific.
I was just about to say, we haven't got anything without a name today. No. Everything that we've had has got a name. So you might also see HBC and some numbers. You might see TR and some numbers. You might see YCH and some numbers. Y College has different numbers as well. CR sometimes you see. There's all, like, those are hops that are still in development. They're going out to brewers and they can be used, but they haven't got to a commercial point where they've been given a name yet. And that can take up to 10 years.
So one example is that the other day I literally had this track brewing, Dreaming Of. And if you watch the video, that's a can. I had this the other day, and it's a double dry hopped HBC 586 IPA.
Oh, do you want me to tell you what HBC 586 does?
Oh, yes, please do. This is a really great example, because obviously we didn't have one lined up, and it was a really great beer. It was, for me, I really, really enjoyed it.
So HBC 586 has intense tropical fruit punch notes of guava, mango and citrus. It's perfect for hazy, fruit-forward IPA styles.
And I feel like that checks out with what this was. It was great. It was.
I really enjoy, and I've not had it in many things. I really enjoy HPC 630.
Couldn't even remember what that would be.
Red berry and cherry notes, but when I've done a rub and sniff of it, I get raspberry ripple.
Oh my god,
delish.
That's amazing. How would is there a reference guide that someone can sort of use, or is that more like an internal sort of reference guide that would be hard to get?
If it's out and about and brewers can buy it and use it, just search for that number online and it'll tell you what it's like. Like if it's out being used by breweries, and there's probably a flavour profile of it online somewhere.
I would love to do like a whole separate conversation with a brewery, or just in general a hop supplier or something that's like, when you have these, how do you go about distributing this particular experimental hop? What is the thought process behind it? It's and how long from breeding it to the point of you're actually using it on a commercial, it's being used on a commercial level, and how much does that have to go through the iterations of the commercial brewing before it actually goes, yep, you get a name now? I know we kind of touched upon some of it very lightly when we spoke to Yakima, but it would be cool to sort of talk a bit more in depth about that now, about that whole process, and how it's decided who gets to run with a particular hop. How did, because I'm guessing that it's not track just went, you know what, I'm really wanting some HBC 586. Well, maybe they did, but how would they know? Did they just Google it and go, HBC 586 sounds exactly like what we're trying to achieve right now?
Well, if it's available for sale, the list that I'm looking at right now is a product guide. So this goes out to brewers and they know that they can buy it. So if it's on the product guide, you can buy it. So they'll know what sort of thing it is and whether they want to give it a go. They might have seen it elsewhere,
It'd be interesting from the brewery's perspective as well to go, how did they decide?
Sometimes it's we're gonna there's conversations had where it's well, we want to brew this, we kind of what sort of things can we use, and the companies will advise and be well, this one's have a go with this and see what you think, try this. We had in our little hops fridge at events, we had some of the experimental ones for people to take away and try. It's that simple. Someone goes, give this a go,
and then
see what you think.
I liked it. I want more of that. Yeah, I think it's an exciting thing. We probably had the perfect ending about 5 minutes ago, but then I just thought that was really interesting. Let's talk about that.
Into unnamed hops, but anyway,
unnamed hops. That's for another time, maybe.
That's for another day.
Wow. I'm enjoying this. I want to go. All three of these were absolutely
they were all
banging.
really good. I was slightly apprehensive because, I'm a dark beer girl. Usually hoppy beers are not my fave. But actually, I really enjoyed all of these.
Yeah, I think they're all really interesting ones.
Although they've all the two hoppy ones have got Nelson in, and that's one of my faves. So
I was going to say Nelson is. I feel like Nelson is one of those ones that are niche though, because it's if you're a person that likes the taste of Nelson, you like the taste of Nelson. If you're a person that it's like Sriracha, where people you like it, you don't like someone that does not like it. That's what they pick out, and they don't like it. Sriracha though is a little bit more niche, maybe. Than
it was we were tasting something with Sabro, and they were Sabro, and I was I actually really like Sabro. I'm probably one of the only people that
what?
Really I mean, I know you and I like Sabro.
I think a lot of people like Sabro, but I think it's trendy to not like Sabro. But I also think that if you're a West Coast person, you really don't like Sabro. I think Sabro is one of those things that almost sometimes, if you're a West Coast person, you're probably really I'm just so bored of that. No, I'm good. But also, I think even if you are a New England person and you like the flavour profile of Sabro normally, I feel like sometimes it's it almost went through a phase of being so overused that I think it just became almost a meme of itself to be what?
When you drink Sabro,
I never did. I always liked it.
When you drink Sabro, what are the flavours that you generally get? Coconut. That's it.
I'm sure I get more, but the first thing that I think it all depends on what it's mixed with. For me, it's coconut consistently, but then the other elements of it, I'm sure, depend on what it's mixed with.
So the other day, someone said to me, green fruit pastels, and I was like, oh my god. And the beer I was drinking, I was like, Yeah, I'm getting coconut, pineapple, and green fruit pastels. And I was like, I've never picked that up before, but you are correct.
So, like, someone could say that to me, and this would be where, like, I go, yeah.
Oh, do you not know what green fruit
pastel is? I know what a fruit pastel is, but I've
never...
not
had a green fruit pastel?
No, because
you won't like it. It's chewy.
Because I don't mind fruit pastels, but green is my least favourite flavour. Oh. Blue, unless it's like apple.
The next time... No.
If it's sour apple, I'm fine. But other than that, green is... Yeah, I don't like the green flavour.
The next time we have a...
top-tier colour.
Blue's not a colour. Blue's not a flavour, it's a colour.
I stand by that. Blue is the best of the E numbers. The best of the E numbers.
Because we did finish this about 10 minutes ago. We're carrying on with something else. Anyway, the next time we have a Sabro beer, we're going to see if it tastes like green fruit pastels.
Give it a go, but also weigh in on your opinion. Is blue a flavour, yes or no? The answer is yes.
This is irrelevant to this episode. Tori, people can talk to you whether blue is a flavour, though it's nothing to this episode.
You can weigh in on if blue is a flavour, for sure. Like, that is 100% what you can do. There was going to be something else I was going to prompt people to talk about, but now, like, you know, I have already... I feel like I have really segregated our audience. I've basically told anyone that doesn't drink coffee and enjoys frappuccinos that they are drinking a baby chino, that they are a child. And then I've also said, no, I'm in the same breath as calling other people children. I was like, blue is the best flavour, and I stand by it. So, yeah.
I don't even need to comment on that.
I said what I said. It's fine. So if you want to come and talk to me about any of those things, or just interesting hops. Interesting hop varieties. Sabro. I'll talk to you about Sabro. I'll talk to you about Zaka.
Does it taste like green? Does it taste like green fruit pastels?
What flavor? What colour does it taste like? Let me know. If you want to reach out, I'm on Instagram at adventures_in_hoptimism. And on Gmail at adventuresandoptimism@gmail.com. And you can also weigh in on this argument or any of the arguments if you reach out to both of us at A Woman's Brew on Instagram or A Woman's Brew podcast on Gmail. Joe, if people want to learn more about these interesting hop things and all the hop knowledge you have, the hop product knowledge that you have, we're not going to do a plug for anything that's work related, because that is no affiliation there.
A Woman's Brew is bipartisan.
100%. Clearly, we've demonstrated in this episode we are very neutral. We are Switzerland.
We're not allowed to be. But you can ask me some questions, and I can put you in contact with some very expert people on these types of things. So if you want to do that, you can contact me at my beer school, which is Love Beer Learning, and we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok and Pinterest. I'm generally on Instagram though. You can also come to my website. There is some bits about hops on there that you might be interested in if that's what's floating your boat, and that is lovebeerlearning.co.uk, or you can email me lovebeerlearning@gmail.com. I really want to go finish this pineapple.
Let's go finish the beer.
It's really good. Cheers.